Well, good morning, everyone. We are finally back for NFL Fantasy Matchup in our Friday edition. We're going to hear from Jed's picks. We're going to talk about Thursday Night Football. We're going to preview all of the games. As usual, there's Jimmy on the bottom. There's Jed to my right. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Hey, let's start off with what we were just talking about. James Robinson over at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Hey, Jed, let me just here's the thing. And I know a lot of times you said you didn't play him. My frustration with James Robinson is Trevor Lawrence to get to the goal line. Carlos Hyde is a scratch. He got injured, and so he didn't play. So you knew it was going to be James Robinson. But every single time they got near, Trevor Lawrence would try to run it in. That fourth down play at the goal line, he gets stopped. Give it to James Robinson. That actually, I think, lost them momentum, and they lost by 3 points. Jed.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I'd be curious to know if he audible to that, or if that was the play call. I don't know if you could tell, but no, I totally agree. So actually, what I'll highlight is I was just saying I didn't play James Robinson. I also did not pick up Tyler Boyd. I was on the verge of, and this to me is why you have to watch the news, because I didn't know that Carlos Hyde was out. Had I have known that, I definitely would have played James Robinson, because you knew he wouldn't be losing carries to him. But I knew with Tyler Boyd that T. Higgins was out. I wasn't sure. There was like a little bit of a question. They said if this game had been on Sunday, he would have played. And so I didn't pick up Tyler Boyd, but I should have known that he would be the clear number 2. And he ended up getting over 100 yards. I think he had 10 catches. I mean, he had a great game. So the other thing I'll say is that it just shows for that Cincinnati offense. I think this was a good win for them. This was a classic trap game. They could have easily lost that. But I think this shows kind of their mental fortitude that they won. But it shows that in the Cincinnati passing game, the number 2 wide receiver can get you starter points. So you have to watch that. It's either going to be T. Higgins or it's going to be Tyler Boyd.
Some people, I don't know if you've heard the speculation, but one of the things I've been hearing out there is we're not entirely sure what's going on with T. Higgins. He might be a little longer. He might be out longer than some people think. There's some thought that he'll be back next week, but he might actually also be out for a few more weeks, similar to the Joe Mixon thing. I guess Cincinnati seems to have a reputation of not entirely telling people what's going on.
Hey, also on the Jacksonville Jaguars scene, DJ Chark, broken ankle. He is out. So now you should know and Marvin Jones.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, agree. I think Jacksonville is right. I mean, they're ripe for a win. Like the last 2 games were very close. They were very competitive. So yeah, you need to look to the wide receivers with Chark out. There's going to be something there. But for me, I think if you've been holding on to James Robinson, you got to feel good. Like after the first 2 weeks, we're a little worried, but I feel like it's trending up.
The ESPN guys were saying if you're in a dynasty league, this is the time to pick up a Trevor Lawrence. What do you guys think?
I don't know, man. I don't know, to be really honest. I guess I'm just more worried about the team overall. Like it's not necessarily his talent. It's just where is the team going? There's so many good young quarterbacks right now that I can think of that I would want over Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah. My head. Go ahead, Tom.
No, the question you're still trying to figure out is whether Urban Meyer will stay past the first year.
Well, that's the same thing, right? Same thing with the Chicago Bears, and I know we'll talk about that as well too. You got Justin Fields and you got Trevor Lawrence, who's pretty 2 good rookie running backs from a dynasty perspective. The issue isn't necessarily them and their skills. I think it's whether or not the head coach is going to be there. And both of them right now, it's like if tomorrow they leave, I don't think anybody would be surprised by it.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
One other thing, Joe Mixon rushed 16 times for 67 yards, but he actually was not in toward the latter part of the fourth quarter. Perrin was actually in because he has a minor ankle injury, so something to monitor as well too. Hey, let me actually go through some of the injuries as well too, and then from that point, love for you to comment a couple of things. Christian McCaffrey, expected to miss this game, should be back for next week. Quentin Nelson, all-pro left tackle, high ankle sprain. This affects the running game as well as Carson Wentz. A.J. Brown, week to week with the strained hamstring. Same thing with Julio Jones. There's a good chance both of them players are not playing. Darrell Henderson, hopeful with his ribs. should be good to go for week 4. Tyler Lockett avoided a serious knee injury. There's a good chance he won't be playing. Juju Smith-Schuster, bruised ribs. Lamar Jackson misses Wednesday, Thursday with a back issue. George Kittle, calf injury. Antonio Gibson, shin injury. Rob Gronkowski looks like he'll be playing, but he has missed practice the last couple times. Giovanni Bernard, MCL sprain. Ken Hamler is on injured reserve. James White is out. Any of those stick out to you in terms of injuries?
Well, for sure, I know Rob Gronkowski is going to be playing against the Patriots. Tyler Lockett, I was just reading, he did not practice, and most likely he will not play, which ends up being well for DK Metcalf. I think we're also waiting for Dalvin Cook. I don't think they've officially said he's going to be playing yet. So I think for those people who are holding on to Alexander Madison, like myself, I'm just waiting to see because that affects who I'm playing for the running back position. And to be honest, I really don't care about any of the Pittsburgh Steelers guys. The only person I think I would even care about is Nigel Harris because none of those 3 receivers, especially Juju, is really doing well this year from a fantasy perspective.
Yeah, the only one that caught my eye was the Darrell Henderson. It's a big game this week. The Rams are playing the Cardinals. I expect a lot of points. So if Henderson is in, even just for the goal line carries, I think it would be worth it.
Hey, let me ask you a quick question before we go Jets picks. I know tight end. A lot of times, Kyle Pitts is not doing well. Gerald Everett is okay. Higbee is doing okay. Mark Andrews is doing okay. Tyler Conklin, Minnesota.
The tight end, yeah.
He caught 7 passes for 70 yards in a tight end. He was tight end 1 in week 3. Same thing with Schultz over in Dallas. Any of you guys like any of them, Conklin or Schultz?
I think all of those tight ends are roughly the same, right? Unless you're Waller, Kelsey, a Hawkinson right now. Most of them will give you some good weeks, and some of them aren't. To be honest, I was looking through all of the stats for the tight ends. I looked at Schultz. I looked at Conklin. I looked at
Higbee.
Knox. Yeah. Knox from Buffalo out of that group is the most consistent in terms of double-digit fantasy points. If you looked at the points that Schultz as well as also Conklin scored the last few weeks, they were still in single digits. And so I think for me, I'm like, look, if you need a tight end, this is a great time to pick them up. But also know that they might not be as consistent. Now, if I had a Jonnu Smith right now, I would pick those guys up over a Jonnu Smith.
Yeah, I agree on the tight end. Sorry, I just had a email come in. So I think there's a lot of different tight ends to pick up. You can look at now, which is kind of interesting given we talked about how the strength of the tight end position this year. Even just last night, Uzma having 2 touchdowns.
See
if that continues.
Yeah.
Your picks for the week?
Oh wait, hey Tom, can I say one more thing? Here's a super sleeper waiver wire. If Julio Jones and AJ Brown does not play, the person that they said to watch out for is a guy by the name of Nick Westbrook. I don't even know how to say his name. Akeem. He's a wide receiver. He's playing on Titans. He's a rookie this year. But they're saying that he's somebody to watch, right? So if you have a 12-team league and you have a space, I would say go out and just pick him up and see if it works out.
So are we going to picks?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Sorry, you froze out there, Tommy. So there's a lot of good games this week and some really interesting spreads. Actually, that Cincinnati Jacksonville game. Cincinnati was a 7-point favorite, but that's the biggest spread they've had all season. So it would have been a fairly decent one to pick the underdog. The other one I'll mention is, you guys, I don't know if you saw this, the Buffalo Bills are 17-point favorites against the Texans. That is a huge number. Very hard to resist if you're a bettor or a gambler to take the Texans and take the points. I mean, that's just a lot of points. So you might want to look there. The other couple games I'll mention, the Panthers. Let's see if the Panthers are really for real. They're 3-0. They're playing the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys offense seems to be clicking. And I think Vegas is showing you that they don't believe Carolina is for real. Cowboys are 4.5-point favorites. And I actually do like the Cowboys in that game. So I think that's an interesting one to watch. The other two big ones, the Cardinals playing the Rams. I love this game. The Rams are 4-point favorites. And I know Stafford's look great and that defenses look good, but I am going with the Rams in this one. I think the Rams can, if not win outright, they can at least beat the spread. So I like the Cardinals as my underdog pick over the Rams. And then the last one I'll mention is the Seahawks are playing the 49ers in San Francisco, and they are 3-point underdogs. So the 49ers are the favorites, and I like Seattle here. Seattle has, yes, they've lost 2 games, but they were close. If you look at their offensive production, it's been there. I know Tyler Lockett might be out, but I expect in this division game for Seattle to step up and beat the 49ers.
Got it. Good. Jen, hey, quick question for you. Let me ask you a quick question. I was looking at some of the league that you and I and Jimmy are in. You picked up New England and dropped Baltimore. Why?
So I think that's another interesting trend. I think the defenses we expected to be good are not necessarily producing on fantasy. So Baltimore is a good example. They are, and actually I'm worried about Baltimore as a whole. I'm actually starting to jump ship on Baltimore as a team that's going to do well. I think there was a little bit of a mirage in that win over Kansas City. So the big thing for me is they haven't had more than 5 points in the past 3 weeks. And I actually made that pickup for New England for week 5, because in week 5, New England is playing, I think, Houston. And so basically I'm picking up for the future defensive play.
Well, because I was saying, if you were going to pick them up for this week, I don't think there's any way they're going to stop Tom Brady and those guys.
Well, that's why they got dropped. I think that's why New England got dropped. And so that to me has been, so Baltimore and Pittsburgh typically are the defense. Even the Rams are the defensive that have great points, but they haven't been producing. So I'm just, jumping ship on that.
Yeah. Oh, the worst defensive team right now is Washington. I mean, have you seen the Washington football team? They're in the negatives.
Yeah. Well, so here's the thing is, one of the leagues I'm in, I've lost the last 3 weeks, and I couldn't figure out why. And it's because my defense has been losing it for me. Because ESPN, sometimes it's like you're up by so much, and then if they keep scoring, all of a sudden you lose all these points. So I had Washington as a defense, and I was like, forget it. And finally, the 2 defenses that I started looking at that's done really well this year is either the Panthers or the Saints and the Bills. Those are like the top 3 defenses from a points perspective.
Yeah, I'll just mention that I cannot stand ESPN's fantasy thing. I like Yahoo so much better.
Yeah.
I just cannot stand the way, even just the way they do the projection of the points. It doesn't help you follow the thing. So
okay. So I agree. Let's spend 30 seconds on that. I hate ESPN because sometimes you're looking at it and you're like, oh, I'm going to do really well. And then you look at it and just say, no, this defense statistic is deceiving. Because sometimes it's so high that if they score a touchdown, all of a sudden it just drops, right? And so for me, I'm like, you don't have a realistic idea of what's really going to happen. Whereas like Yahoo, I feel like is so much better from, this is the type of person, or this is the person that should be playing this week.
Yeah. The other thing I'll mention, Yahoo, when you're picking up players off the waiver wire, it's so much easier on Yahoo to understand like how many people own this player, how many people are in ads and drops. On ESPN, they do it by position. It's like ridiculous. Yeah. It's so much harder to get to.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's review some of the games. Love your thoughts on it, Jim. I'll start with you. Titans versus Jets, as we talked about. A.J. Brown, Julio Jones probably is going to be out. Derrick Henry continues to be the running back number 1 so far. He is not only a receiving threat, running threat. Man, he is a dual threat. My big question is on the Jets side. Are you starting Corey Davis after 2 bad weeks?
I guess Jed is saying yes, right? So you're saying yes. I don't know much about Corey Davis. He's not on any of my teams, so I haven't really been paying attention to him. Honestly, the one person remotely that I've been paying attention to is Michael Carter. He's still out there in a number of waiver wires. He started doing decently in the last game. And so for me, I'm like, look, if I got a couple positions where I just want to take a flyer on these guys, Michael Carter, the rookie running back, is clearly somebody you want to take a look at because he's now the number 1 running back for the Jets.
Yeah, and the reason I like Corey Davis is because the Titans secondary is suspect. So if you look at the Titans games with Seattle, Minnesota, they gave up quite a few points through the air. And so that's why I think Corey Davis you can plug back in as the number 1.
Yeah. 2 stats for you, as usual. Our intern, Justin, does a great job. The Titans are allowing the 4th most fantasy points to wide receivers. Contrast that to the Jets are allowing the 3rd most fantasy points to running backs. So Derrick Henry will be running all day. And at the same time, hey, Corey Davis, like Jed said, is a great pickup as well, too. Jed, let's go over the Chiefs versus Eagles. I would say Patrick Mahomes is a number 1 quarterback, right? Is he completely otherworldly like he has been years past? Not as much this year. And their defense has really been struggling as well, too. And last week, the Eagles got blew out in their game.
Yeah, so I think Patrick Mahomes is definitely not the number 1 quarterback. I think that should be obvious, and that is one of the biggest surprises of this season. The offense has struggled a little bit. It's still producing, but the big problem has been the defense. Kansas City's defense is not there. So this game, Kansas City is actually a 6.5-point favorite. I think that's pretty high. I don't think Philadelphia is as bad as they looked last week when they got blown out by the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys offense just really kind of jumped on the Eagles and they got a little bit shell shocked. So I expect the Eagles to play this one close. I would have no problems playing some of your Eagles stars. So I think Devonta Smith, I think even Milo Sanders and Jalen Hurts, I think are all plays in this game.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, Jed, let me ask you a quick question. Milo Sanders, running back 27 so far. In the last couple of weeks, he's been outside the top 30. Are you even starting him on a weekly basis? Is he a running back 2 anymore?
Yeah, as soon as I said that, I was like, oh man, actually Miles Sanders, I'm not sure. That's a good call. I mean, if you have a viable option, I think it's reasonable to sit him now. I think this is now week 4. This is where you got to start to make some of the hard calls on people where 3 weeks in, they still aren't producing. And so, yeah, I think Miles Sanders is definitely a candidate to sit.
Okay, so Thursday morning, I woke up and all of a sudden I see Tommy picking up Desean Watson in a couple of leagues. And I was like, is he seeing something I'm not seeing? So I'm starting to look, right? And there's rumors out there that talks have heated up by the Eagles and the Dolphins about possibly bringing in Desean Watson. So the question for me is, do you take a spot and pick up a Desean Watson? Because it's not like you can add him to your IR. If you can add him to your IR, I can see it. But do you want to pick up a Desean Watson?
I don't, because as I said, I'm worried that essentially the reason the league hasn't started an official investigation is because no one's tried to play him. In fact, and so that's why I think the league hasn't done anything. The minute somebody tries to play him and put him on the active roster, I would expect the league to respond by saying we've opened an investigation, and during that, he's not allowed to play essentially. So I'm worried that whether or not he'll actually be able to play, as long as that lawsuit is still active and not resolved.
Mm-hmm.
And Jed, I'm banking on the fact that if the NFL says they're going to open an investigation, it's going to take months. They're going to still allow him to play pending investigation. Once they determine, he'll keep appealing, appeal. Next thing you know, it goes in the next season. So just in case, I think a lot of times I have some open roster spots.
Okay, do you guys think a trade is imminent? Do you think there's going to be a trade? I mean, whether or not he plays, but do you think he'll be traded?
I think
Miami,
so.
I think. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think Houston would be insane not to do it, especially because remember, he wants out. So he's been asking to get out. I mean, this is the perfect opportunity. And that means that, remember, they were asking for 3 number 1s and 2 number 2s. They apparently have dropped that a little bit, but that still means they're going to get at least 4 solid picks out of him. To me, I don't see how you turn that down.
Especially for a player that's not doing anything either.
Yeah.
Jim, let's go over the Panthers and Cowboys. A couple questions. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, Christian McCaffrey is out. Love to get your thoughts. Do you start Chuba Hubbard as well, too? And also on the Dallas side, Ezekiel Elliott did pretty well. Do you also play Tony Pollard if he hasn't on your team? With the thought, let me give you a thing. The Panthers have been the best defense against running backs in 2021, allowing the fewest fantasy points per week. Thoughts on that?
So here's my thing. I'm interested in seeing how Darnold does, right? If he's going to do another week, a fourth week where he's going to score a couple touchdowns and over 300 yards, he's actually somebody you might want to consider picking up. So that's one. Second is I am playing Hubbard because I actually think that historically you've seen similar to Mike Davis last year, whoever replaces McCaffrey has a decent outing, and I'm going to roll the dice on Hubbard. The other thing I'm also paying attention to on the Panthers is I know DJ Moore's the number one receiver. The question I have is who's the number two receiver? I actually think it's going to end up being Terrence Marshall versus a Robbie Anderson because Robbie Anderson is pretty much non-existent. And so Terrence Marshall actually the last couple of weeks has actually done pretty well. He's got about 6 receptions on average. He's got 8 balls thrown his way. And I actually think he's a pretty decent receiver, not just in a dynasty, but for somebody to look at long term. Cowboys-wise, I don't know. Like, I still think, and this is just my thing, I still think that Tony Pollard's your running back that you want versus an Ezekiel Elliott. So if I had Elliott today, I'm going to figure out how to trade him because you're coming off of a high. But that's just my thought. And I'm hoping, right, so between Cooper and CeeDee Lamb, they had 6 receptions between the both of them. I'm hoping that they're going to get more this coming week.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said, Jimmy. I think that your stat, Tommy, on Carolina's defense is very misleading because they have not played a good team. 2 of the 3 teams they won are last in the bottom 5. And so I think that's a misleading stat. I would definitely play my Cowboys running backs. And I agree with you, Jimmy. I think Pollard might be the one to own longer term. But either way, I expect there to be a lot of points here. On the Carolina side, no problem with Chuba Hubbard. Ron Rivera came out this week and essentially said, hey, I don't do anything different. Or not Ron Rivera.
Roll.
Yeah,
Matt Roll.
Yeah. So, I don't do anything different with Chuba Hubbard. And so I think we saw that last week too. So I would roll with him and not have any issues with that. Your comment on Robbie Anderson is hilarious. I don't know if you guys have all seen the memes about how basically you're saying Sam Darnold will not throw to him because he reminds him of the Jets.
Oh yeah, that's true.
I think that is so funny, and I think it's true. It's really weird because they had a good connection last year, and it's just he has been non-existent. So if you want to roll the dice, maybe it's a time to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hey, Jed, let me ask you a quick question. This actually goes to our next question as well, too. If you had the chance, Sam Darnold has been doing really well, all right? You have Ryan Tannehill. There's no starting wide receivers. Suddenly you have Daniel Jones, Jameis Winston, David Carr, or Sam Darnold. Who would you play this week?
Yeah, that's a good one. And it's funny. I love how you always start with Tannehill because that's who I have. So it's like very relevant. Of those groups, I like Derek Carr. I think Las Vegas has been one of the big surprises. They're playing the Chargers this week, so there's going to be some serious fireworks there. I think if the Raiders have any chance, they're going to have to stay through the air. And Carr is a very, to me, a streaky quarterback, but maybe he's on one of those good streaks. And so this is one of the weeks to roll the dice over at Tannehill.
I mean, if you really think about it, even from a receiver standpoint, Carr's got some good weapons. He's got Waller, he's got Edwards, he's got Ruggs, right? Tannehill, I think, is a better quarterback because he's more consistent. But who does he have to throw to? Like nobody.
Yeah. All right, Jed, Giants versus Saints. Saquon Barkley, he did decently well, but he was playing Atlanta last week. Daniel Jones didn't do as well, too. A lot of it went to Saquon Barkley. Alvin Kamara has been the disappointment. And one person that we've been highly touting, Jawan Johnson, but man, he has not done nothing since week 1. Thoughts?
Yeah, this offense, the Saints have been so disappointing. But I expect them to right the ship this week. They're 7-point favorites against the Giants. I think that's a little high, but I expect them to win pretty handily. So I think this is the week that Kamara can get back on track. If you have him, you shouldn't be sitting him. Winston is a tougher call. I'm really not sure there. They may focus on the run game. He's just been so erratic. So not sure. But the Giants defense can definitely be beat. On the flip side, for the Giants, you just hope that they stick with Saquon Barkley and that they don't make it just the Daniel Jones rushing show. But honestly, I don't have faith that they'll do that. So, but I will say, if you have Daniel Jones and you've been using him, because of the rushes, it's making up for his lack of accuracy. Yeah. So he's definitely playable.
But Jed, there's no receivers that he's throwing to, similar to the Titans. I mean, Galladay is out. Slayton.
You don't think Evan Ingram's gonna bust out?
No, every year I think Evan Ingram is gonna do well, and this is the first year in the last few years I decide I'm not even gonna draft him because he's not worth it. He has so much potential though, but he's just not worth it.
No, I that's why I say the Giants are a team. I don't want any players on the Giants.
Okay, by the way, speaking of Giants, so this is the first week that Eli and Peyton is not going to broadcast on ESPN. And all over the internet, people are really sad about it because they love the Eli and Peyton broadcasts.
Yeah. Jim, let's go over to Browns versus Vikings. Hey, Nick Chubb has been doing well, running back 9. Kareem Hunt has been doing really well. Odell Beckham, actually, no restrictions on him this week. There's been one other guy in one of my old leagues who has been making me so many offers for Odell Beckham, all right? He's even willing to trade Deontay Johnson. He's offered me Chase Claypool, all of these guys for Odell Beckham. And then also Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson, but more so Kirk Cousins has been one of your best quarterbacks. He is quarterback 6 in the last 3 weeks. Jim, thoughts?
Yeah, so hey, Tom, while I do this, can you just check to see is there any updates on Dalvin Cook, Because I think that's actually going to be one of the bigger questions is who's going to be playing running back for the Minnesota Vikings.
He practiced both Wednesday and Thursday, but was limited, but he did practice, whereas last week he didn't practice. Yeah. So all signs are that he'll play on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, you want to keep – I mean, for me, I'm just going to keep Alexander Madison. He's going to come – he's going to come in handy towards one of these next few weeks because he's actually a pretty decent running back. If you put him on another team, he'll be a starter for that team.
Oh no, to me, he's the number one of the backup running backs. Like he can plug in and you can have basically no drop off in production. That's why I have him. If you have Dalvin Cook and you didn't draft Madison, you're basically shooting yourself in the foot because you can just plug and play those two guys.
Yeah, so I mean, Jefferson's been doing great. Thielen's been doing great for me. I mean, all the Vikings plays from a fantasy standpoint has actually been doing pretty well. Conklin, like we talked earlier, is a good option from a tight end position. The Browns, I mean, honestly, without Jarvis Landry and without any other receivers, Beckham becomes your number one receiver. I think he had 5 or 6 targets. He led them in receiving last week. I think he'll do that again. They're going to use Kareem Hunt in the Jarvis Landry role, so he's going to come out of the backfield and get some receptions. And actually, last week he had a more productive fantasy day against the Bears than Nick Chubb. Chubb, I think, is good. He's a good runner. But the one thing with with Hunt, you get from a PPR league is you get the points because he's also able to catch out of the backfield too.
I think Hunt's per average, per carry or per reception is almost double Chubb. So it's interesting, but Chubb is definitely not having as good of a year as last year, but he's still the primary back. So you definitely don't want to sit him.
Mm-hmm. All right, let me throw a scenario out. Hey, I love the debate that ESPN had discussion and listening at their most recent podcast. They were arguing, Jen and Jim, I didn't know what you thought about this. They said, Kirk Cousins is doing so well. You need to trade him. Trade, let's say, in Aaron Rodgers if you have it. And then from that point, trade him to someone who has Ryan Tannehill and then pick Kirk Cousins up on the waivers if he's on it as your starting quarterback. Would you guys do that?
Well, just in general, I love the strategy of if you have identified someone on the waivers that you can pick up who you think its production is pretty close to what you have, and then you can trade that asset. Yeah, that's a very good strategy, right? Because you're essentially doubling the star players on your team. So I like the strategy. The question is just, do you believe that Kirk Cousins is going to continue to produce at the level he's produced? I personally do not. I am not a Kirk Cousins fan. If I had Kirk Cousins, I might try to sell him high and trade him away that way, but I'm not picking him up and depending on him as my QB.
The other thing too to add, remember he doesn't have a vaccine for COVID, and so if tomorrow he's out, that's a risk you're taking as well too. And so that's right now. That's not a risk I'm willing to take, But I do agree with the strategy that they've talked about, figuring out how to take one of your star players and turn them into a couple of other assets.
Another way that strategy kind of plays out, and I have a league where I had Mahomes, and I also drafted Herbert, and this is in my work league. And I know that was kind of crazy, but Herbert dropped really late, it was like round 9 or 10, and so I went ahead and grabbed him. And so what I realized was, in my mind, I was trying to trade Herbert. I was like, okay, I'll keep Mahomes and I'll trade Herbert. What I realized is I need to flip that. I actually need to keep Herbert,
but trade Mahomes
because Mahomes has the name recognition.
Yeah, totally.
I can get back a good player for him.
Yeah. And honestly, sometimes for me, I like the 2 quarterback strategy. That's something I've adopted the last couple of years, but I'm really kind of doing more of it this year, is draft 2 quarterbacks and figure out a way to get rid of one of them for some assets towards the season.
Okay, I would say this. In one of our dynasty leagues, one of our players, who shall remain nameless, this is ridiculous, has Tom Brady on the team, Desean Watson, Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields. That's a little too many quarterbacks.
Yeah, I debated dropping Justin Fields just because I'm so upset at Nagy, and I just don't know if he's ever going to use him, but I can't. I feel like he just should produce so many points given his rushing ability and I just feel like there's so much untapped potential. So I think I'm going to wait maybe 1 or 2 more weeks, but if nothing happens after that, I may have to cut him.
Which actually is a good segment to Lions and Bears. Before I asked you, Jed, to preview Lions and Bears, I want to ask you, good idea or bad idea for the Bears to move to Arlington Heights?
I like it. I was like, hey, the big thing to me is how small
Soldier Field
is. Yeah, like they don't have enough space, and so I think that's the biggest thing is if they can increase capacity. And of course the big thing is the suites. All the stadiums, that's where they make their money, is the suites. And so but kudos to them. I mean, hey, Arlington Heights isn't far from me. I can drive over there.
I will say I was surprised by the price. I mean, it's a lot of money, but they only paid $167 million for it. That's actually not that much when you can think about the potential a big stadium like this, because I think they're going to do what some of these other places like SoFi in Dallas did.
Yeah, and have you guys been to Arlington Racetrack? Have you been there before?
I passed by it.
I've been there. I went to 2 corporate events there. Was in the suites. It's nice. So I don't know if they're going to just destroy it and rebuild completely, but it's definitely, you have the space to build a beautiful facility there. So I could see them doing that.
It's 33 acres that they bought for all of that money. And now here's the thing. The mayor is all mad because the Bears refused to negotiate with the Park District. The Park, we all know, living in Chicago, how bad the field is. That is always a complaint. How messy the field is, how many games they play right before the game. So, look, if I'm a client, you haven't been treating me with a good field all these years. Why in the world am I negotiating with you during this period of time? Just not.
No, the mayor's made a bad move, because I think she should have negotiated and figure out a way to keep the Chicago Bears in the city. But right now, with them moving, they're going to lose it. I mean, she says what? The soccer team signed a lease. I was like, no one's going to go to see the soccer team at Soldier Field.
No, they would be doing better if they just converted it into some kind of a park or something. I think you'd get a lot more out of it. But it not only has the field upkeep been bad, but remember the whole parking situation. The Bears lose because essentially the city and the park district get the money from the parking lot. Yeah, and so they've been losing out on that revenue too. So there's to me, this is a win situation, not a win-win situation, but this is a no-brainer for the Bears.
Going back to the Bears game, Tom, I mean, from a fantasy standpoint, I'll let Jed talk about that, but I really do hope the Bears lose this one and lose bad, because if they keep losing, they'll get rid of the Nagy as a coach. And right now, I just think they need somebody new in there.
Oh man, that hurts my heart. I don't want to say it to root for them to lose, but I hear what you're saying. I actually think they can win this game though for sure against the Lions. They're 3-point favorites, which is what you expect at home. But the Lions did not look great. Remember, the Lions have basically no wide receivers, so they're only passing to Hawkins. Essentially, all they have is Swift. It's all about DeAndre Swift.
Who's actually doing pretty good from a
He's
fantasy.
doing very good. Yeah, if you have him in
Yeah.
fantasy, if you roll the dice on him, you've been paid off in spades. I mean, he's playing very well and should continue to. Their coach actually came out and said they want to feed him the ball more. So I think if he gets even just 5 more carries, his production is going to be through the roof. So keep playing him, but I expect the Bears to win this game. I like this as a bounce back. So if you've got your Montgomery, if you've got Allen, I think that today this is the time to get him.
Well, okay, so who is it? I was listening to one of the podcasts, NFL, I think it was NFL, and they were ripping Allen Robinson because they said you draft him high, but right now, based off of everything, there is no way you can get rid of Allen Robinson unless you take like 20 cents on the dollar because there's nobody who wants Allen Robinson right now. I think you can get rid of David Montgomery, get something back, but Allen Robinson, you're not going to get much out of it.
Hey, I would if anyone's willing to trade Montgomery, I'd take him. Montgomery has looked great, and the Bears are a mess, but I would take Montgomery.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I should tell my wife she has Montgomery. No, I actually have Montgomery sitting there. I'll be looking at it for you. Hey, let's go on, Jim. Texans versus Bill. We got run on. Brandon Cooks is someone that you're starting. Zach Moss is the 2 players I'd love to get from you is Zach Moss and Stephon Diggs. Thoughts on this game?
By the way, Tommy's been trying to get Zach Moss and Stephon. Who have you been trying to get from me? Oh, Brandon Cooks. Tommy's been trying to get Brandon Cooks from me. And for me, I'm like, look, I don't know how long Brandon Cooks is going to last, but he's the only person they can throw things to right now. And honestly, the other game, he had 15 receptions. And I was like, you can't beat that. So for me, I'm on to Brandon Cooks for now. And honestly, you're starting to see Josh Allen coming in. I'm hoping week 3 is where he's just gonna go gangbusters in these next few weeks. I still would not be surprised if he becomes the MVP. The other thing is, if I had Diggs, I'm willing to trade him right now. I'm not a Diggs believer. I am a Zach Moss believer, but I'm not a Diggs believer.
Yeah, and that's my worry. I've got Diggs, and I was just going to say that. I think if he doesn't score in this game, if he doesn't get double-digit points in this game, I'm either sitting him or I'm trading him because he has been such a disappointment. I drafted him really high. In a lot of leagues, he was in my 2nd-round draft pick, and so he has not panned out. This to me is the last week waiting on him.
Yeah.
Hey, by the way, I have Diggs and Montgomery on my Dynasty League, so I may be making you an offer here, Jed.
Yeah, but can I just say, for those people who are looking at your waiver wires, Zach Moss. Zach Moss is the person you want to go after. And I still see him sitting out there, but in all the leagues where I pick them up. For me, I'm going to really put my benches on Zach Moss, and I'm still big Marquise Callaway fan.
Jet, let's go over to Colts versus Dolphins. Jonathan Taylor has just been very disappointing. He has been running back 28 this year. Marlon Mack, I think a lot of times he's asked for a trade. They're looking for a running back needy team for them to trade Marlon Mack. And Myles Gaskin has been a very disappointing. So probably the star of this game is Jalen Waddle and Michael Pittman here.
Yeah, or I was going to say I'm playing Nyheim Hines in at least one league because he's with the passes out of the backfield, he's been able to surpass, I think, Jonathan Taylor. I don't see this as a really good game fantasy wise. I think both teams are a mess. But yeah, I think Michael Pittman, you expect, some of the receptions there. Gaskins, I was looking at him in at least one of our leagues. He's on the waivers, and I know he hasn't gotten, I think, over 60 yards in a game because they've been sharing carries. But this last game, they were sharing carries across the 3 backs. In this last game, they switched to just 2. They dropped your guy, Ahmed. He didn't get any carries or very few the last game. So if that continues, Gaskin could emerge as a playable running back.
Jed, somebody keeps trying to trade me Gaskin for Justin Jefferson. And I was like, that is the worst trade in the entire world.
It could be someone like Tommy who's just trying to start the conversation. They don't believe you're really
No. Actually, that's not me. I would not be insulting for that thing. I mean, now you're just asking for trouble. Yeah, Jim, Washington football team against Falcons. Taylor Heineke has been good. We're not going to talk about Antonio Gibson. We're not going to talk about McLaurin, but more so Logan Thomas, as bad as he is tight end 7 on the year. But more so on the Atlanta team, do you play Cordero Patterson, and what about Calvin Ridley?
Logan Thomas is the 7 tight end.
Yeah,
that's
tight end
insane.
7.
I can't. Yep. I have Logan Thomas, and I would have bet he was outside top 10.
There's not that many. There's not that many consistent tight ends outside of the top 4.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, most of them are all around the same. I don't know. I mean, I hope they eventually. Okay, so this is what they were saying about Calvin Ridley. I was watching ESPN. They said actually Calvin Ridley has gotten the same receptions as he's had the last few years. The problem isn't necessarily Calvin Ridley. The problem is actually Matt Ryan, because in the past, Ryan was able to throw this ball downfield. And so whereas like before he was able to get like a 30-yard or 40-yard pass, now it's like 16 yards. And so you can tell the arm strength for a Matt Ryan is not there, similar to a Ben Roethlisberger. So the concern that they have is unless the Falcons and their new offensive coordinator, Arthur Smith, changes the strategy and puts these people in a position to win, it's almost like you're not going to get anything. Like, for instance, Kyle Pitts barely had – and he had 0 receptions in the first half of last week's game, and he ended up with like 4 or 5 receptions, right? Like, you got to get your ball to your tight end a little bit more. Even Mike Davis, they haven't really been able to use. I mean, they've used Patterson, but Mike Davis has really not been used effectively.
Tommy, do you know what Kyle Pitts is ranked on the tight end for the last? I know you said Logan Thomas was 7. Where was Kyle Pitts?
You know what? I don't have that, but I'll take a look at that. There is one stat that I want to give in terms of what Jimmy had said. Matt Ryan last year, Calvin Ridley averaged 15.3 yards per catch. Career average 13.8. This year, it is 8.8 yards per catch.
Yeah, it's really low. Yeah. And that's where the points, because think about it, the points that he was getting by running downfield allowed him to do really well. This year, Matt Ryan, Matt Ryan, Roethlisberger, those guys, they're not like the Herberts of the world or even the Joe Burrows of the world, right? Joe Burrows of the world, they can chuck that thing down to Jamar Chase. You're not getting them from some of these older quarterbacks.
Yeah, it's definitely a changing of the guard this year, I feel like. With the exception of Tom Brady, all the other 40-plus or 38, 39-year-old quarterbacks, it's time to cut.
I mean, even Carson Wentz, and he's not that old. He's not throwing it downfield. I mean, look at Pittman. Pittman's just getting short, middle-of-the-road passes, and that's what he's getting.
Got it. Hey, let's go through because I realize I have a meeting in about 10 minutes. Seahawks versus 49ers. Thoughts on that one, Jed?
Seahawks 49ers. Yeah, so I said that I like the Seahawks to win this one. So be careful with Tyler Lockett if he is out. It sounds like he's not going to play. So DK Metcalf, this should be a nice game for him if you've got him, put him in. Chris Carson, I expect Seattle to play well. On the 49er side, I hope that Kittles can come around a little bit. Oh, I'll mention this. So Deebo Samuel has been the number 1. Brandon Ayuk has really been picking it up. And so if Ayuk is sitting out there on your waiver wires, he's someone to take a look at. I like Ayuk a lot.
He is sitting on a number of waiver wires. I've been surprised how many people dumped him.
Yeah, so he might be someone would be surprised if he has a pretty good game here.
Jim, Cardinals versus Ram. Kyler Murray is great. Cooper Kupp is out of this world, everything like that. Robert Woods is the one that I'm concerned about.
You know what? Everyone keeps saying be steady on Robert Woods because he's gonna come at some point. I just feel like they're just not similar to Anderson and Sam Darnold. They're just not paying attention to Robert Woods. You know, his receptions aren't there. Cooper Kupp seems to be the favorite that they're going after. So I think for me, it's Cooper Kupp. Kyler Murray, I think, is good. I'm interested to see this week who's really going to get more carries. Is it going to continue to be Chase Edmonds, or is Connors going to get more carries, especially at the goal line? And also, who's really the number 2 receiver, AJ Green or Rondale Moore?
Christian Kirk.
Or I guess there's Christian Kirk. See, I never think about Christian Kirk
Oh, I like Kirk.
I'm not a believer in him. I still think Rondale Moore is going to emerge from that group after DeAndre Hopkins.
No, I like Kirk a lot. I'll say this on the Chargers side: don't sleep on Desean Jackson. I know he's an old guy.
Or you mean on the Rams, right?
Yeah, I mean on the Rams. Yeah, on the Rams side. If don't sleep on him. If you watched that game last week, Stafford missed him twice, and he was way behind the defense. I think Stafford's just figuring out his speed. I think he's going to become what we thought Robert Woods would be. I think Woods is done. So I don't know if it was in our league, but I picked up Desean Jackson in one league.
The only problem with I like Desean Jackson. He was always the guy who ran down the field. But remember, he did that in a couple of games with Tampa last year, and he got injured. He's out. He's an old dude, and so I don't want to lose him for injury.
Got it. Steelers versus Packers. Hey, look, we don't know who's playing. Big Ben may most likely be benched after another bad game. Deontay Johnson should play this game. Chase Claypool, we don't know about Juju Smith. What's good? I mean, Aaron Jones is running all over the place. Davante Adams is great. Aaron Rodgers is great. Thoughts on this game here, Jed?
Oh, I think the Packers are going to crush them. I think the Steelers are done. I think Steelers and Falcons similarly. I think the Packers are going to destroy them. So I would be hesitant unless you're picking up garbage points. There probably going to be some garbage points for the Steelers receivers. So you could think about that. But otherwise, Harris. I don't know. Nigel Harris, has he been doing anything? I feel like that guy is someone.
Last week he did pretty well. He got me about 8.
He's the only person that they can throw to or run. I mean, so he's worth the asset.
Okay, yeah. So there you go. So maybe for garbage points, you put in Najee Harris. Otherwise, this is all about the Packers to me.
Jim, Ravens versus Broncos. Marquise Brown, Mark Andrews. Melvin Gordon has been starting to go on waivers with the rise of Javonte Williams. Thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I like the Broncos team. I like Cortland Sutton. I like who's
Tim Patrick.
Yeah, Tim. He gives you consistent points. Javonte Williams. I've been going after him by giving some people some bad trades, but no one is biting. And so people, I think that know that Williams is really going to be good. Ravens, I mean, I don't know. Like the one thing that a lot of people have been saying, and I don't know if this is true or not, the one thing that everyone's been saying is Bateman might be somebody that you might want to take a risk on. He's coming back from IR this week. So he might be somebody that you might want to pick up. So I took a stab at him in one league just to throw it out there and just see.
I like Denver in this game. I think Denver's going to beat Baltimore. As I said, I think Baltimore is on the downturn. So I'm expecting Denver to win. But yeah, for me on the Baltimore side, like I had Tyson Williams. I'm not playing him. I just don't know other than Lamar Jackson, who else you may play.
And they're so dumb. I just wish that they would just stick with Tyson Williams. Forget this 3-headed running back you guys are trying to do.
Yeah. 2 more games. Jed, Buccaneers, Patriots. Look, all you're doing is starting Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski, and they're just going to take care of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, totally. I expect this to be a bit of a revenge match. And so I think the team is going to rally for Tom, and I think they're going to crush the Patriots. I think on the Patriots side, though, there's going to be some points. And the question is just where. I mean, I have Harris, and I've been waiting for him to pop because James White is now out for the year. I think they declared.
Jacoby Myers.
Yeah, Jacoby Myers.
No, Kendrick Bourne. Kendrick
Bourne. Yeah.
So again, there's going to be some garbage points there, so you may be able to find that. Don't sleep on was it Rondale Stevenson, the running back in New England?
He's on a lot of waiver wires right now. Yeah. A lot of people dropped him.
I still like the guy. So he could emerge, especially with James White out of the picture.
Hey, look, don't sleep on Nick Folk. All right, he's been a very, very good field goal kicker. I think a lot of times they're going to kick a lot of field goals in this game.
That's the quote of the year. Don't sleep on this field goal kicker.
Yeah. Jim, last one. Raiders against Chargers. Hey, look, we were just talking about Derek Carr, but the key one is Mike Williams, week in and week out. I think he's been a lot better, which Jed has on the team, a lot better than Keenan Allen.
I was thinking about it this year. I was like, who the heck thought at the beginning of the season that Mike Williams and Cooper Kupp could become your number 1 receivers? And honestly, I expect a big game from Mike Williams. I actually think that Henry Ruggs is somebody who's actually going to start emerging. He's done pretty well the last few games, and I actually think Carr's starting to trust him a little bit more.
Yeah, Mike Williams is definitely my waiver wire pickup of the year. He's been awesome.
I mean, he gives you. I mean, what he gives you at least 20 something points.
Oh, he's a definite starter. He's a clear starter, so it's been great. I know.
Last thing, I wish I could talk a little bit about starter sit. This is why I wish that I did not fall asleep and not wake up during my draft with the Japanese guys. The one guy who knew a lot of things about football picked up Patrick Mahomes, Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara, Jamar Chase, Nick Chubb, and Mike Williams.
Wow.
That's why
That's a good team.
That's a stacked team, man.
So, all right. See you guys next week.
Yep.
All right.
See ya.